Is Sunday Adelaja, who is the founder and senior pastor of the Embassy of the Blessed Kingdom of God for All Nations, an evangelical charismatic megachurch in Kiev, Ukraine. Now, at a time where people are struggling to read, this man has authored over 400 books. That's to tell you how much he intends to pass knowledge on to people and develop them, because knowledge is power. Today, let's have Sunday Adelaja as we delve into his word and also the contributions he's made to the word through evangelism and other works that he's been doing. I'm not here alone to explore the word of Sunday Adelaja. Femi Ayodele is also in the studio.
He's a journalist, a writer, he authored so many books which have also blessed life and inspired a lot of young people across the world. So we're glad to have him. So let's delve into the discussion.
So what informed your decision to leave Nigeria? At what time exactly did you come to the conclusion that you needed to leave Nigeria? How has that impacted your life?
Well, I left Nigeria close to, going to about 40 years ago when I was 19. This was in the 80s. And that time, as a young graduate from secondary school, I just finished my WAEC, and I also did JAM. I got admission to the then University of Ife. I guess it's called Obafemi Awolowo University now. But even though I was living less than 2 hours away in Ogun State, I'm from Ogun State, so in a village close to Ijebu-Ode. But can you believe this? I couldn't afford to even get myself a transport fare to go to collect my results from University of Ife, 2 hours away. So we were so poor, even for me to give my WAEC was a problem, where it was a relative that heard that I was not being permitted to the exam hall because I didn't pay for the WAEC form that just, came from nowhere and settled the 50 naira fee that was needed to pay for my exams. Otherwise, I would have even given the exam. So this was the situation when I was going through newspaper. Those days, you could just go through any newspaper and see advertisements of scholarships. So I was going through, I knew that there were opportunities in newspapers. So I knew that was my only chance. So every time I had an opportunity to lay my hand on newspapers, I would look for scholarships. And voila, I got one advertisement and I applied. And there were a lot of people, applying for this scholarship. For one place, we had 1,000 people. So we had 300,000 applications. They were only going to take 300 students for scholarship. So this is how I got my luck in life. And I got a scholarship to study in the former Soviet Union.
Dr. Adelaja, your story has been very inspiring to a lot of young people across the world. I would like you to talk about what do you think is responsible or the secret of your success. You are pastoring at a point in Ukraine before the war broke out, an all-white church, about 90 or 99% all-white. What will you attribute your success to, and what has been the secret over the years?
When I was growing up in my village, I used to curse and hate on my grandmother because I didn't know my father. I've never met him. And my mother, I didn't know her till I was a teenager because she had brought me back from her previous husband and dropped me with that mother and remarried. So she was married, and I was growing up with my grandmother. And she used to take me to the bush to get some firewood and then, get it arranged, put it on my head, from Idomila, which was my village, to Ijebu-Ode in the morning before going to school. And then after school, the first thing was to go and fetch other set of firewood. And this was in hot sun, scorching sun of Ijebu. And so I used to curse her that, my God, why am I so unlucky in life? And why is life so difficult for me? But when I got to Russia, and my professor told me that I would never speak Russian language because without that, you would not be able to go into the university. You have to learn the Russian language 1 year before you go into the university. And he said, because I came late, and I couldn't catch up with the class. He said, you will never speak this language. And I said, no, God will help me. He said, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. And I tell you, as your professor, you will never speak this language. If you ever do, I will become a believer. And so I said, okay, what will I do now? And I remembered that my sister had shared with me a scripture that in the book of Deuteronomy 28, verse 13, that says that you shall be the head and not the tail. You shall be you shall be first and not last. And I said, okay, so God has given me this promise. So what do I do now? So I vowed to God that I would do my best from today. I will work hard like I never worked hard before. And I said, after classes, I will not go to my dormitory, to my hostel. I will be going to the library. So from that day, we spent 7 hours or 6 in classes. After that 7 hours in classes, I normally will just go and take a lunch for 30 minutes, then go to the library. I will be in the library for the next 6 hours. And I did that for the next 7 years when I was in the university till I finished my master's. So I will always stay in the library. I would resist the temptation of going out. From Monday to Friday, I will spend 6 hours every day in the library. And then I became the best student of that university in their history, in their 25 years of history at that point. Why? Because of hard work. So I believed God, but I also worked hard. I think hard work is actually the womb of every success.
Wow, that's remarkable. Now, talking about believing in God.
I'm sorry. I'm going to complete my thought. So
okay,
the
ahead.
reason why I connected it to my grandmother was that this time when the professor told me I will never make it, I remember the suffering that I went through in the village. And I said, if I could survive it in Idomela, this studying in Europe, in their library was like aircon. So much comfort. I've never seen this kind of comfort, even in the library or classrooms. I said, if I could survive it under the scorching sun of Africa, if I could survive it without 3 square meal, if I could survive it eating only eba and gari in all my life, this one with all this comfort. So I always refer back to my pain. My pain of the past propelled me. I will always remember that pain. And I say, I will never go back to that pain. So that pain that I endured made me to endure the lesser pain. So the greater pain of poverty, the greater pain of depravity that I had back in Africa propelled me to work hard so much that even as much as I worked, it was not as serious as the pain I was going through in Africa. So I think I'm saying that just to encourage my people back out at home who are going through poverty or pain or lack of different things, scarcity, that their pain could be the greatest secret of their success in life.
Okay, taking it from there, the concept of time. Now, you looked back to where you were coming from, and that motivated you to push forward to change things about your future. Let's bring it now to Africa. What have we gone through in the past as a continent that Africa is supposed to look back at, leverage that, use it as a motivation to change the fortunes of the future?
You see, people who are in Africa and who have been privileged to know how to read, how to write, to go to school, they should see themselves as chosen people, privileged people. Because in Nigeria, for example, about 50% of our people still cannot read or write. So we who are able to read and write, we are the elite of our societies, especially those who have finished higher education, university. So we have to look at that as an opportunity to become a ladder and a bridge to our less fortunate countrymen and compatriots. So if God has given me opportunity to even be able to read, how am I using that ability to read other than for myself? Could I just organize a class for adult education for people who cannot read or write? Anything we know, we should be sharing it with people who don't know what we know. So if I have any insight in anything, if I have any skill, why don't I use my weekends or my Saturday, my Sunday to gather young people and share the skills that I have. If we will be our brother's keepers, if we will take our time to share whatever we have with people who don't have as much near us, Africa will become a greater place, rather than just waiting for the government or the president to come and resolve all our problems for us.
Africa records millions of people flocking to religious organizations, religion activities, events, church activities. Yet, our continent or society is still ravaged with corruption, impunity, and all that. Talk to us about the missing links and what can be done to fix them. Why do we have this kind of development in Africa in spite of our religious disposition?
Well, one of the greatest problems that we are facing is that we have embraced Christianity as a religion, but not as a way of life. So what we are doing is that we are going to church that's become like a culture for us now. And we go to church, and then when we go to church, we pray to God that God should come and help us resolve our problems. Well, that is why I wrote my book that you people probably have heard about, that only God can save Nigeria. No, what a myth. It's a myth to think that God will come and save Nigeria. I mean, people who don't believe in Christianity, like Saudi Arabia, Arab Emirates, Kuwait, all those are Muslim countries. They didn't wait just praying. In America, England, Germany, France, they didn't wait for God to come and build their countries for them. They used the principles of the Bible, the principles of hard work, the principles of dignity of labor, the principles of integrity, the principles of faithfulness in little, the principles of productivity, principles of process of production. And all those principles are from the Bible. They took those principles and build them as principles to engineer them to build a better society. But what we have done is that we have taught our people to pray and to wait on God to come and do for them what they could do for themselves. It's a tragedy, actually. Religion has become our hindrances, a hurdle in our development, unfortunately. Religion is supposed to propel us, supposed to be our propeller, but it has become a hurdle in the path of our growth.
In reference to your book, The Value-Driven Nation, you are the author of that book. Taking a clue from the lessons and some of your submissions as regards the value-driven nation, I would like you to talk about how Nigeria, and by extension Africa, be a value-driven nation, and by extension Africa be a value-driven continent.
Very good question. Number one, for us to be value-driven, we must realize that values are cultivated in the homes. So government needs to develop a program, a national program that will encourage parents to teach their children the right value systems. And we have to even give them a list of the values that we want to inculcate into our family, into our children, into our future, into our society as a fabric. That's number one. We must, teach and intentionally encourage parents to inculcate values in their children. Number two, for us to be a value-driven country, we must know that our educational system must not just teach physics and biology and geography. We must begin to teach in our schools values. We must go back to the days where we used to have civic education or ethics. In Europe, they call it ethics. We must begin to teach ethics and begin to, have as a nation, we must have a list of value systems that we want to be the basis of our society and of our country as a whole. It is values that develop nations. And until we come up with those lists of values, I have developed such lists of values. In my book, Nigeria and the Leadership Questions, I enumerated all those values that Nigerians need for development. But also, apart from the schools, apart from educational system, apart from the family, another institution that is responsible for formation of values are the religious organizations. Our pulpits are responsible either for, for propagating the right values or the wrong values. There are some mosques, for example, where people are in other parts of the world, where people have used pulpit to propagate jihad. And see what people are doing. People began to go and kill themselves, and others. That is the power of pulpit. But if we are going to use that same pulpit to propagate the right values, we will be able to build a wonderful country, just like the Europeans did. In Europe, it is what they call the Protestant ethics that are responsible for the European or modern civilization that we are enjoying today. The Protestants, people like Martin Luther, people like all the other reformers, they embrace values of the Bible and brought them out of the four walls of the church and propagated them in the society as a whole. And those values that are called Protestant values are responsible for what the Europe that we see today.
Okay, we live in a time where there is so much external influence. First of all, there is the influence of the Western practice, Western culture on the African culture, and then the exposure to other way of life through social media. So how can Africa handle this? How can homes, schools, and even government handle this to shape the values of Africans to one that encouraging certain virtues that will result to nation building, or by extension, the building of Africa?
Well, the Bible says somewhere in Proverbs that teach a child in the way that he should go, and that when he's grown up, he will not depart from that path. So the foundation is very important. If the foundation we give to ourselves, our children, our families, from home and from our native nations are good, just like I referred back to the foundation of hard work that was given to me by my grandmother, it propelled me in future to success. And it never left me because it was inculcated into my system from childhood. So whatever we put into into the foundation of character building of our children, of the society as a whole, will stand the test of time against the pressure that is coming from outside. But also, some of the values that are coming from outside are not negative always. Some of them are positive. So we should also learn to derive from the developed countries what are some of these principles that have helped them to grow and to become so developed, so that we will be able to embrace some of those as well.
As a social reformer, an author of many books, and someone who has traveled across the globe, I would like you to do a comparison of the value system in Africa to that of Europe and other continents, and because you talked about the value system, I would like you to do a comparison and let's see what Africa can do better.
Okay, for example, let me say that is a very good question, and I think this illustration will help me to pass my message across. The Bible says that righteousness or doing things right exalts a nation. Whenever you see a nation where people have been taught to obey rules and laws and principles, when they have been taught to obey rules, those nations are always exalted. When people have been taught to do things right, either they are Christians or non-Christians, believers or non-believers, just learn to do things right, those nations will always be developed. For example, there is a famous pastor in Nigeria that everybody knows. If I mention his name, everybody will know him. And he is the one who told this story. Maybe some people have heard this story. He was traveling from Nigeria to England through the Heathrow airport. And when he got to the airport, he was stopped, and because he had a Nigerian passport, so they were saying, "What are you coming to do in Great Britain today?" And he told them, "I'm a pastor, I'm coming to see my churches here." And they said, "Okay, if you're a pastor, yesterday was Sunday. What did you preach? What was the topic that you preached yesterday?" And he said, "Oh, I can tell you, but I'm a pastor, I cannot lie." Then the custom officer said, "Oh, you're a pastor? Yes. You cannot lie because of that?" "Yes, I'm a pastor, I cannot lie." So the woman said, it was a woman, said, "So you are telling me because you are a pastor, you will not lie or you cannot lie. So naturally in your country where you are coming from, it means if you are not a pastor, then, you could lie." or people who are not pastors because they are connected to God, they could lie. But in this country that you are coming to, you don't need to be a pastor not to lie. Everybody doesn't, you are not supposed to lie. People don't lie here. And this is the difference. If you come to Africa, for example, you will see so many people who go to church. A large number of people who call themselves believers, but they could lie, they could steal, they could, all the corrupt people we are talking about, they'll go to one church or mosque or the other. But in Europe, you don't see people going to church so much. They might not go to church, but it has been imbibed in their society. Their society has been formed in such a way that truth, honesty, integrity has become part of the fabric of their country. So if we could succeed in intentionally teaching our people, everybody out of religion, that honesty is the best policy, that truth, love for truth is for the path to righteousness and to elevation, then we will begin to see the rapid growth that we never anticipated. Because right now, no matter what the government does, somebody is stealing it. Even I heard that the railways that the government is building, some people are going to steal the rails. So what can you do now? Because of the lack of that vital quality, which is truth, love for truth, integrity, and righteousness in our people. Our people must learn to do things right, even if they don't go to church.
As a follow-up to that question, talking about the concept and disposition and orientation of Africans to timing or time compared to the Western world, you know, in this part, there's a word you talk about African time or African timing. Talk to us about why this is significant, the orientation, the attitude towards time and timing. What's our conception about the issue of timing as far as African continent compared to the Western world?
You are so, either you've read some of my books or something, because this question you are asking, I wrote a whole book about it, and it's called How to Make Every African Country a First World Country. And in that book, I made calculations of how Nigeria's GDP could be doubled or tripled just by doing one thing, by abiding by time. Because, for example, if you take one person, let's say an average worker is making $10 an hour, just as an example, I don't know what they're making, let's say $10 an hour. And we averagely in Nigeria, everybody comes late to everywhere, at least maybe 1 hour. 1 hour goes late, 1 hour to school, goes late, 1 hour to work, goes within the whole day, 24 hours a day, our people could wait 3 hours just coming late. Now multiply that 3 hours by if 3 hours is $10, just make it it means $30 in a day, $30 into 26 days in a month, and then multiply that by 275 days in a year. You know, by the time I made all the calculations, the Nigeria economy, just by dealing with lateness alone, could be a $1 trillion economy. That is the importance of work, because of time. Because time is not just money. Time is life. Time is productivity. Time, some people are producing, something in every hour. Some people are producing something in every minute, whereas we are wasting an hour going late to a place of production. And you are very correct. It's something that we must really declare war against in Africa.
Okay, as much as we must declare war on lateness in Africa and encourage timeliness, there are values that need to be encouraged or rewarded for it to become something people embrace, because over time people have lost these values. Some persons did not even grow up with a value. Some persons grew up with the mindset of there is African time. In fact, the only place people respect time is maybe for school or work. Outside that, African time applies. Now, you talked extensively before the time issue about honesty, certain values that should be encouraged in Africa: integrity, honesty. How can nations encourage this, reward it, so it becomes something people do? Because for those who naturally, or maybe by their upbringing, will want to be honest, But it seems that there is no reward for it. I don't know, it seems like you're foolish. So what should change at the national level and then at the continental level to encourage certain values?
Very, very, very good question. The problem with values and living by values is that, especially honesty and integrity, the problem with it is that it's not a short period kind of, it's not a short-term result. Normally, when you live by values, it's in the long run, you see the result of it. But most people want to have a short-term result. They want to have a quick fix. They want to have instant gratification. And that instant gratification is our undoing. Whereas values demands endurance. Values demand stamina. They demand perseverance. And it is only after that that you are normally rewarded. But really, at the end of the day, you know, if you are my customer and you come to buy things from me, I always sell it for you higher than the normal price, or I normally reduce something, take from it, and you get a smaller weight instead of the original weight. One day, that deception will come back to bite me, because you will realize that I've been deceiving you. And once you realize, once the truth comes out, you will tell your friends, I will not just lose you, I will lose all your family members, I will lose all the people you know, who you will tell that I'm a shit. So in that case, on the other hand, I've been a person of integrity. I've always been doing, you know, selling things at the right price. I've always been giving you the right weight. I've always been, then you will say, okay, go to that other person, because that other shop is where the person is a man of integrity. He never cheats. So it takes time for integrity to play out. But at the end of the day, people who live by any other values other than the value of honesty, integrity, and truth, they always lose out. But if there is no fix, there is no quick fix to it. It takes perseverance, and the only way to make people to embrace this is to teach it and enforce it from childhood. For example, another problem in Nigeria is that no matter the offense, people always find a way to look to avoid punishment. So this is a big problem. I will tell you a story, a small problem that will help me to communicate this my lesson. When I was a student in Russia, I went to Germany on holiday, and then we, you know, in Nigeria we never obey the traffic light. So I saw that it was red, the traffic light was red, but I and my friend, we were thinking, but there's no car now, no car here, no car to the right, no car to the left. We just say, okay, let's cross. From nowhere, we saw police come and stop us. I said, where they come from? We didn't see them. Anyway, they told us we have to pay 10 euros. It used to be mark in those days, let's say euro. 10 euro penalty. So we said, oh, sorry, because in Nigeria, we're used to the fact that, I'm sorry for that, it's ambulance passing by. So we're used to the fact that if you offend in something, just beg the authority and they will pity you. They will have mercy. So we say, oh, please, please, please. We are students. We are from Russia. We don't have 10 euros. They said, no, pay now. We said, no, please. Can we pay? Oh, please forgive us. They said, okay, 20 euros. I said, 20 euros, but please, now, no, we don't have, please, for the 30 euros. No, 20, 40 euros. No, 40 euros. 50 euro. If you talk again, it will keep on going. That is how we ended up paying 50 euro issue. From saying we don't have 10, because they have a system that enforces the right things, enforces righteousness, that upholds justice, equity, and uprightness. So, but in Nigeria, even if somebody would have come, other people would say, oh, pity him now, oh, leave him alone now. The parents will come and say, oh, let him go. Even recently, some members of parliament will be coming to intercede for the person who is doing the wrong thing. Ministers will be calling to say, so we have a whole means of bypassing the law, of bypassing what is right, until we begin to enforce righteousness by force. Just like when you go to Singapore. In Singapore, everything attracts penalty.
All
So
right, Dr.
penalty
Adelaja.
must be established for things to work in our country.
All right, Dr. Adelaja. The conversation with Dr. Adelaja still continues, but we'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll have more conversation with our special guest. Stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us on the issue of policy and value, as we've been talking with Dr. Sunday Adelaja, who's been talking extensively about policy and value and how Africa can achieve that. All right, Dr. Sunday Adelaja, we do know that there was a time when there was a kind of communal mentorship for children. A child doesn't belong to a particular family, the child belongs to the entire community. Is there a way to return to that kind of system where correction of a child is not left alone to the parents? A child could do something wrong and somebody from the community is correcting the child and even going as far as enforcing some form of punishment just to deter the child from returning to such behavior. What is the way to go in a time like this about that?
Thank you so much. That attitude, practice was popular back in Africa in those days when people had what is called taboos, when people had the things that are accepted by the community as a whole and the things that are not accepted. If we could go back to that, it will really help us a big deal. But unfortunately, before we could go back to that successfully, something must happen. We must collectively dethrone the reign of money, the supremacy of money in our society. Because right now, it's like anybody that has money becomes the authority right now in our culture. In the olden days, it used to be you respect your elders, and the rules, the accepted norms of the society take preeminence over money or any status that anybody might have. Let me tell you a story that to help bring this point home. I have a friend of mine who is a professor. He's from the eastern part of Nigeria, and because he's over 60 and he's now the eldest in his family, in his clan. So when they were having a family meeting, and he was suggesting something. He's a professor from America, but a very educated guy. And but he was making some points to his clan's people. While he was talking, one young man, this man is about 65, but there was a young man there who was just only 27 or 28 years old, who came, he just stopped there and said, hey, you call yourself a professor and you are just talking grammar. Now English in your shop, and just put 10,000 US dollar cash on the table and say, this is money. This is what will resolve the issue. You are talking some principles, something. This is money. This is out. And the elders, when I was growing up in Nigeria, if anybody would have done that in the village, they would have banished that person from the village. But now, those elders who are sitting, the so-called elders who are sitting there, what they said is that, professor, you see, this is a young man. And you see, it is money that talks these days. You see, he brought solution. Money is the solution. And you are just talking. So we have got to do what the young man is saying, because he has brought the money. You see, until we dethrone the supremacy of money, the love for money in our society, that thing will not work that you are talking about. We must go back, first of all, to let people know that some things are more important than money. And those things are values and virtues. Those things are principles. Those things are righteousness. Those principles that are should be much more respected. Character, they should be much more respected. Honesty, they should be much more respected than money. When that is an acceptable norm among our people, when everybody understands that things like character, principles, honesty, truth are more important than money, then every other person that is doing wrong, the whole community will be able to say, no, you are going against the norms. You are going against the principle that we have all agreed to abide by. And that is when the community can contribute to building a healthy society. So we still go back to, letting everybody be informed about what is right and what is wrong. But money has become our impediment that we must remove as a big major problem in our society.
There's this popular quote by J.F. Kennedy, ask what you can do for your country. How do we drive home this kind of message to change the narrative and the mindset in Africa?
Oh, beautiful. This is a principle that I will tell you that is not very popular in our society, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I grew up in Nigeria, and I was in Nigeria till I was 19, and I finished secondary school in Nigeria. But I never heard any teaching, training, preaching on responsibility. I never heard it. The first time I heard the word, I knew the word responsibility, but I never related it to myself as an individual. When I was in Africa, I thought responsibility is only something for leaders. But the first time I really heard the word about responsibility, the real meaning of responsibility was after I came to Europe. And so this, what we are talking about and what J.F. Kennedy was talking about is responsibility of every individual before their society. And this is one thing that we hardly teach. When you go back to our people, unfortunately, what we normally, even our elites, what they talk about, go to any normal TV program in Nigeria, they will be telling you what the government is not doing, what the government is supposed to do, what the leaders are supposed to do. But very few of them talk about personal responsibility of every citizen before their society. Every one of us hold the duty to be responsible for our neighbors, to be responsible for our families, to be responsible for the land that we live on, to be responsible for people around us, be responsible to our nation. And those kind of things, we need to begin to talk about it. And people like you in the media, you are also responsible for formulating and propagating the right values in the society, including the value of responsibility.
Now let's expand the scope of that conversation. If people are not to think about what their country would do for them, but rather think of what they can do for their country, how does the country celebrate its heroes and those who have contributed to its development to inspire more people to think of contributing to the nation? Take Nigeria, for instance.
Well, sorry?
Let's use Nigeria as a case study.
Okay. For example, in Nigeria, like many other countries, there are national honors, merits and medals that they give to encourage people who have contributed to the development of Nigeria. And the same thing happens everywhere. But when you go to a place like America, for example, they don't wait till you get national honor or national merit before you are celebrated. Every community has a way, and it's a whole system of celebrating people who have excelled in that community. Every little town, every little village, every local government, every state also hold events celebrating people who are doing the right thing. And you are very correct. This is one of the ways where we could really propagate these right values, by celebrating those people who are doing the right thing. And we should not just wait until the government does this once in a year, but we should be having such events of celebrating and honoring people who do the right thing every day. Every day there must be some honor somewhere. But the people that we see right now that are being celebrated are people maybe who are in Nollywood, or who are in politics, or who are in sports. And maybe somebody who funds a lost money, a lost bag of money, and brought it. But we must celebrate the little things people do in every sphere of life. That will really contribute to making our country more healthy.
Okay, still in that, we find that when nationally people who have contributed to the country want to be celebrated, sometimes it is done posthumously after they die. That's when a posthumous award is given. How can we correct that too? Timeliness of award.
That's very sad. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. And I think, this is a tradition of celebrating people when they are dead, because unfortunately, we see ourselves as competitors when we're alive. A lot of people who are celebrating people who are dead is because they now see that they cannot compete with them anymore. He's gone, and there is nothing to be afraid of about him. But while he's here, he's like he's an opposition to some people, or a competitor to some people. So, but when we realize that the nation is more important, and the success of the nation is even much more important, then anybody that contributes to that nation, when we love our country, when the love for the nation is preeminent in our heart, then we'll be able to see that anybody that does anything good for the nation has to attract the encouragement from every one of us.
I'll keep making reference to your books because they are quite relevant. This particular on church shift, you made some submissions, and I would like you to talk about the role of churches or the role of church leaders in nation building, and then helping to restore the value system in the society.
I always thank you very much. In that book that you are talking about, I was talking about my shock after living in Europe for close to 40 years, going back to Nigeria and seeing that, for example, I was going to a big church where I was invited to. This church, I think the budget of that church is bigger than the budget of that state. I mean, the church is wealthy, rich. But then when you go into the premises, and they have a whole big place there, it's like a whole country, a city, and everything is perfect, working perfectly like in America or like in Europe. But then to get to that place, the street that takes you to that church it was in such a mess, such a horrible state, that it doesn't take 1%, it doesn't even take 0.1% of their budget to fix that road. So I decided to challenge my colleagues, my pastor friends, about that and say, you fix the road. So they were telling me, no, the road is for the government, it's the responsibility of federal government, that one is for the state, that one is. You see, this is because egocentrism, selfishness. Religion has embraced selfishness instead of giving love, instead of loving kindness. If you care about people at all, even your own people that has to pass through that road to come to your church, if we understand love, we will know that, no, this is something that we have to do. Apart from that, I also raised another question with the leadership of that church. Because just around that same church, outside of it, when you come out of, they have a fence. When you get out of this church, just around the fence of the church, you will see all kind of shanties and, huts and very horrible sights of people living in poverty, some selling this, some selling some petty things. And I say, hey, why don't the church take responsibility for all these people? You will be shocked by the response. The teacher told me, the pastor told me, well, God is making a difference between the Christians and non-believers. That when you come in here to the church, you see the way God has blessed us. But those ones, if they want God to bless them, they will come and join the church also, because God is making a difference between those who worship him and those who don't worship him. But I said, but God, Jesus himself left heaven where everything was perfect, came to the earth to rescue us who are wretched. I mean, we are supposed to leave our comfort zone, our own churches, and go to those people, even if they will never accept our religion, even if they will never believe in Jesus Christ or Islam. We should go to them and reach out to them with the love of God. This is why Jesus died for us while we were yet sinners. So, to a large extent, the churches and mosques of our country have a long way to go and a lot to contribute to economic development and the general national transformation of our country. That's why I wrote that book, Church Shift, because church must shift its position. The church must shift its worldview. The church must shift its practices. For example, I was telling them, okay, let's go and arrange and give, arrange a scholarship for those children who are not coming to your church, or give food to those people outside. So they were telling me, well, you don't give to the poor so that you don't become poor. If you want to be rich, if you want to be blessed, you give to somebody who is already blessed. So we don't give to all those people who are already poor. We don't want to attract poverty. This is the kind of doctrine, I don't know where that comes from. Because if the European missionaries who brought Christianity to Africa, if they had not built schools, if they had not built hospitals, if they had not educated us, if they had said that, no, we are unbelievers and we will bring curses upon them, Africa would have been in darkness up to now. So the form of Christianity that is being practiced in our country today breaks my heart. That is the reason for that book, Church Shift.
Okay, still on church shift, there is an argument that the poor will always be with us. An example that those who propose this argument is that of Jesus in the Bible, when he was being anointed with oil from the alabaster box. And then Judas made a suggestion of selling and using the proceeds to take care of the poor. And then he said, the poor will always be with you. So that seems to be like a reference. Why some churches or some people would say the church is not supposed to take care of the poor with church money, because the poor will always be with you. Rather, church should use the money to take care of church and probably propagate the gospel, talking about outreaches. And there is also the thing about principles of prosperity, that to prosper, you must give. What is the balance between these two?
Well, most of the people tell you that the way to prosperity is to bring money. They will always tell you that you bring that money, you must bring it to the church, or you must bring it to the man of God. Well, if you put one and one together or two and two together, you will discover that if anybody who is giving money to the pastor or to the church, at the end of the day, the only person who is going to get blessed and prospered at the end of the day is not you who the money is leaving his hand. It is the person, the pastor, who is collecting from 1,000, 2,000 people who is going to be prospered. So it is deception. Anybody who says that the way for you to come to prosperity is by giving to the church or to the pastor is a crook, is a scam. Those are fraudsters and scammers. But then let's talk about what you said, that the poor will always be with you. Yes, but what Jesus was saying in that, if to paraphrase him in that phrase, is that he said, let this woman use the alabaster oil for me right now, because I will not always be here. But you will always have the poor people around you to do good to. So me, I will be here for a short time. I will not be here. But the poor people, you have opportunity to take care of them every day. So he is not saying that we shouldn't take care of poor people. He's saying that we have all the rest of our life to care for this kind of people. Now, but those people who say that as well don't tell you the practice of the church in the New Testament. And the practice of the church in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, is that the people who brought tithes, offering, and all, all their whatever they have to give, who brought it to the church, the Bible says that they laid all those things at the feet of the apostles. And the Bible also said that the apostles never took those things to their pocket. They never used it to buy jets or buy houses or build universities that other people cannot pay for. What did they do with all those tithes and offering that people brought to the church? The Bible said that they distributed to all the needy people, both Christians and unbelievers who are coming to the church. They distributed all the things that people are normally bringing, the tithe and offering, such that there was nobody who lacked. There was none that lacked. None that lacked. Nobody lacked as a result of the charity efforts of the church. So this is what the church is supposed to be about. If the church is supposed to make sure that all the needs of the people, not just in their church, but in their environment and community, are met through the free will offering of those people who can afford it. So that's what I tell my people here in Europe or in Africa, people who listen to me, I tell them, if you don't see what your church is using your tithe and offering for, if you don't see the needy they are taking care of, if you don't see the widows and the orphans that are taken care of, if you don't see the alcoholic and the drug addicts and other people that they are taking care of with your money, don't give money to that church anymore. Use your tithe. You have to give your tithe or offering. You still have to give something from your pocket, because if you stop giving and you only keep everything that you have to yourself, you don't have those things. You don't possess those things. Those things possess you. The principle of tithe is that we shouldn't eat everything. We shouldn't allow things to possess us, but we should always share from what we have. So take your tithe, take your offering, go and look for the needy in your community. Go back to your village every month and look for all the widows there. Look for the orphans there. Look for the old people there, and use your tithe and offering to directly minister to them. This is what Deuteronomy says about tithe and offering. Tithe and offering is for orphans, is for widows, is for strangers, it's for the needy and the poor in the society. So, but people only brought them to church so that church will help them to take care and distribute and take care of the needs of the society. But if you don't see what the church is doing with your money, take your money and look yourself with your own eyes. Look for your relatives that are in need. Look for your village people that are in need. Maybe your brothers and sisters cannot even afford.